Here we are, another week.
Another wild week. Yeah.
Oh, let's start with the U.S. Unbelievable. So you have Joe Biden claiming MAGA are semi-fascists, and then you have Lindsey Graham, Senator of the United States, saying there's going to be blood in the streets.
I think it's headed in that direction because both sides are pushing the extremists on each side.
I know, but I mean, where's this idea of coming together? You have, and then Trump comes out. His latest speech is all about, there's going to be trouble like they've never seen before. I mean, it's the same verbiage he used in the lead up to January 6th. So what's your prediction?
I think there will be some serious conflict.
I think so.
And it will be serious conflict in the streets because MAGA was a huge thing for Trump and his supporters. And to be attacked, you don't want to make America great again?
Well, now he's changed his slogan. There were MAGA hats in the audience when he spoke, but it was "Save America" was the phrase that was on there. It was on the podium. It was on all the posters and everything like that. This idea that the U.S. is a victim, that Donald Trump is a victim, that the people who support MAGA are victims, and that he
he's the savior.
He's the savior, but a victim.
That's right.
Witch hunt, travesty of justice. This is the way he was describing the fact that he was retaining classified documents after being asked for a year to return them.
Sounds like he wants to be Jesus Christ, huh?
Yeah, but it's a cross of his own making.
Yeah, but I think looking at the media and the reporting and how each side is pushing not only their own supporters to move to the extreme, but moving against the extreme of the other side even more vehemently than before. What that would mean is there could be serious conflict in the streets.
Well, I think the way it goes is if all of his candidates don't win, he will announce that there was a national election fraud, and that he'll say we need to have rallies, and he'll be trying to fundraise off that, trying to get his Truth social media to be the center of attention, which also is a moneymaker for him.
Yeah.
He hasn't declared presidency, and a lot of people speculate because he has raised he's raised over 100 million. He has 100 million sitting in his hands, but it's in a pack that he can't switch over to his presidency. So he's in this strange position where he has to spend all this money before he declares his presidency, or he has to give it away. And Donald Trump.
And he gave it away to anybody. No.
Well, he says he's been financially supporting the people who were involved in January 6th and who've been sent to jail for beating up policemen and attacking the Capitol. And he says he's going to give them a full pardon, or he's strongly. I never understand. He's always uses strongly thinking about considering giving them all pardons. Unbelievable.
It's amazing where the U.S. has turned to. It's for those of us who remember the 60s and the 70s. It's absolutely incredible where the U.S. is headed.
But Joe Biden, rather than trying to throw water on the fire, it seems to be intent on throwing gasoline.
Yeah.
I mean, they've tried. Clearly, the Democrats believe that they can win this upcoming midterms by making it about Donald Trump, abortion, and guns.
Yeah.
And the Republicans are going to be beating on the issue of inflation and Joe's lackluster performance, whether it's the withdrawal from Afghanistan, etc. No end in sight.
No end in sight.
Well,
what do you think will happen, though, in terms of midterms?
Midterms, I think, it's so hard to say. Let's look at the inflation rates. If the inflation rate stays even or starts to go down, there's some hope for the Democrats. But if it continues to go up, I think people are going to vote with their pocketbook. I mean, there were 70,000 people in Czechoslovakia on the streets saying they're no longer interested in the Ukrainian situation. They're interested in their own. And
that's right.
We are, 63% of Americans living paycheck to paycheck. Credit card debt going through the roof. as people are borrowing to maintain just their daily lives.
Yeah, voting the pocketbook. Ultimately, it's the economy, right?
Yeah.
But this time, there's so much emotional.
Well, that's what the Republicans, the Democrats are betting on.
Yeah.
Anti-Trump, pro-abortion or people's individual rights, and also guns. There just seems to be almost every day another incident of gun violence.
Several incidents over the weekend.
Let's talk about Jackson, Mississippi. Jackson, Mississippi water crisis. This has been going on for ages. Now they literally can't flush their toilets and they have no drinking water.
You have to boil your water before you drink it.
No, they can't even boil it. It is so contaminated. The only thing they can do now is all drinking water has to be shipped in bottles.
In bottles.
1.1 million bottles so far of water has been distributed. But how is it possible in the richest, most powerful nation on earth, who can spend upwards of $800 billion a year on defense, and yet people don't even have clean water?
The whole infrastructure situation is really quite disastrous.
But it doesn't make sense. It
boggles the mind.
It boggles the mind. We're having extreme weather conditions. Part of this is because of floods and droughts and things like that. But there are whole areas in the United States where they have no water.
Yeah.
The rivers have dried up. Hoover Dam, Lake Mead.
Colorado water is rationed now.
Yeah. Well, and it's not getting better. There's no end in sight.
Yeah.
So it's just unbelievable. Life expectancy falls. Hardly expected. To give you an idea, government data showed life expectancy at birth now stands at 76.1 compared to 79 in
That's a big drop. 3 years is a big drop.
3 years down.
Yeah.
So people who are out there saying COVID, it's no big deal.
That's right.
Right? It's crazy. It seems almost that the people who went through this now want China to fail.
That's right.
They want it to open up, have millions of deaths, and see, no one can control it. Therefore, our irresponsibility is okay.
Yeah. But 3 years is a huge drop. These life expectancy moves in 0-point-something years at a time, But to have a 3-year drop is huge. And there doesn't seem to be much publicity about it or much discussion about that.
No, it's been glossed over.
Yeah.
If governments are about taking care of people.
That's right.
The U.S. government, by any objective measure, has failed.
That's right.
It can't get water to its people. The wealthy are getting wealthier. The poor are getting poorer. 63% of your people are living paycheck to paycheck. You can't seem to do anything about inflation.
And life expectancy.
Yet, more money going to Ukraine. Another 50. The tally is going up. It's now closer to 55 billion after another increase.
That's going to. I think there will be some serious issues in terms of continuing that support to Ukraine, not only from the U.S. but also from the Europeans, right?
Yeah, but
can't take it anymore.
But how is it possible in the space of 6 months they can give 50 billion, or as we said, a lot of it is pork and things like that. But they can designate 50 billion for this, but they couldn't do it for,
addressing
the virus.
Pandemic. That's
they
right.
could have provided vaccines to everybody, and war is more important than the fact that you just lost 3 years of your life expectancy.
That's right.
So talking about stratospheric wealth, top 0.1% in the U.S., according to the National Bureau of Economic Research, they believe that the share held by the super wealthy is actually much higher than estimated. And the reason is that when they did the original research, they only looked at tax returns instead of wealth. So now they're saying that it's probably about, this is economics paper which claimed that wealth held by the top 0.1% in the U.S. was about 16% of the nation's wealth in 2016. Concluded that the wealth is less concentrated among the very rich in the top 0.01% than many believe. But these two researchers said that because they didn't look at the actual wealth and the holdings of these people, these things are completely out the door.
There are all kinds of ways of playing with what your valuation is.
Do you think this was deliberate? I mean, it seems kind of odd that if I'm determining somebody's wealth, I only look at their tax returns. Why wouldn't I look at their holdings of shares and and property and things like this? That's right.
And the shares of, especially shares of companies, if they're not publicly listed, the valuation is what you want it to be.
Exactly. So there was a humorous book put out by the head of Sports Illustrated about Donald Trump, in which he recounted all the times he experienced Donald cheating at golf. And he explained that Donald's way of, he lists himself as, club champion and national champion of all these things. So his strategy was, he would be the first one to play at his own course. And they'd say, I have the course record, because he's the only one who played.
Yeah.
And then he'd say, I'm the club champion because no one else was there. Then there was some guy who played at one of his clubs, and the guy won. Trump saw him months later on the golf course and says, I hear you think you're the club champion. The guy said, yeah, I win. He was playing with his son. He says, yeah, thanks. And he says, no, you're not the club champion because you didn't play me. The guy's like, what? He says, we'll play the next 6 holes. Whoever wins is the club champion. 6 holes. Okay. So they play. Trump beats him, and he's known as a excellent soccer player because he can kick that ball. And
without people noticing.
Yeah, and there was a strange incident where, a guy hits it on the green, Trump hits it in the water, and they get up to the green, and Trump says, no, this is my ball. The guy says, no, your ball went in the water. No, see, there. Of course, his caddy was there first. Also, he has a supercharged golf cart that can go much faster than anyone else's. So he's always there first. It's just strange that you would have stories like this being told about a ex-president, to the extent to which he is just... That's right.
Ex-president with a very strong, loyal following as well.
Yeah. It's unbelievable.
People, it's absolutely amazing when you think about America as a country to have the voting public over 40% supporting someone who's seen in public as lying and cheating and...
Yeah, but I mean, he's established a cult.
Yeah.
I mean, people are willing to overlook everything. I'm sure that somebody will nominate him as a saint because he said he cured blindness and, all this type of thing. He has 3 miracles. I think the only miracle is that he survived so far.
Yeah.
But things are closing in on him. This document thing, he can't walk away from it.
That's right.
He was caught red-handed with classified documents that they had tried a year to get from him in a nice way. Please give us them back. Please give us them back. I've given you everything back, signed by his attorney, drafted by his attorney, signed by his attorney, right? And then they find all of this stuff. I mean, we're talking about 1,100 documents. This is not one document that got lost in the box. It's just really bizarre. Can you imagine anything like that happening in China? I mean, almost anywhere. I mean, last week, the final appeal of the guy who was involved in MD1, the head of Malaysia. They went to his house and they found, like cash and lots of jewelry and shoes. They didn't find classified documents.
No.
The question is, what were in those? I mean, several of them seem to be compromat. This idea of stuff on other leaders. There was one pertaining to Macron, the president of France. One wonders, Donald Trump believes in leverage.
That's right. For whatever negotiations he wants to make. Yeah. Right?
Well, it'll be interesting to see if they'll ever release it because it's classified. But at some point, somebody's going to say...
It's been released in a redacted form.
Well, that was, yeah, they put kind of a list together, and they also put the warrant out there, which is highly unusual. If it wasn't the president of the United States, former president of the United States, they would never do that.
That's right.
Because it infects it. So here we have another. Envita reveals new U.S. government rule restricting export of AI chips to China and Russia. In its SEC filing, Envita said it could lose up to $400 million in potential sales for the third quarter. At what point?
$400 million in one quarter.
Yeah. But at what point do people realize that not selling to China is cutting your own financial throat?
There are two things here. I think it's also reported that less actively reported, let's just say. The fact that restrictions are put in place is reported everywhere. It's a big thing. But less reported is, in terms of other things restricted so far, whenever they went to the Commerce Secretary for approval, they got approval to sell. So it's as they're creating a setup in which, oh, you have to go through this process, otherwise we restrict you. But you want to sell? Go ahead and sell. You know, it's...
You think they'll give Envita
I think they will.
Okay. Well, we'll have to see. But I mean, it's been a week of pound on China side. There seemed to be some glimmers of light when they were able to settle the accounting issue for the 2,000 firms, Chinese firms that are listed in the American bourses. It seemed like maybe there's a glimmer of opening,
hope.
But instead of that, we've heard just, Chip Moore doing more about restricting chips. They're now moving on to trying to make it harder for anybody to sell these extreme lithography machines that do the etching for the chips.
I'm beginning to find that this is a game that the U.S. tries to play, is to put all kinds of restrictions and sanctions and so on and so forth. It hits the press. We're hard on China. We're beating up on China. We will block their advance. But then, for example, Qualcomm is now selling chips all over China. Yeah. And ASML is now selling the etching equipment to China as well.
They are?
They are. Okay. New deliveries. Deliveries in the last 2 months. ASML says, we don't sell to China, they make their own. We lose the market forever,
Yeah. Well, I mean, they've gotten down to 7 nanometer now. Yeah. And I think that, to my mind, that is what is really scary to these entities. Because they say, if China goes off on its own, given the amount that it produces, and the fact that it's the most efficient market right now, we lose out forever.
What the U.S. does in this case is coming back to this issue of creating chips that they think they can use to negotiate. And the creation of the chips, exactly these type of things. Sanctions, blockage, no more this, no more that. But in the short term, their companies will say, no.
No, we're going to have to fire X number of people.
That's right.
That's not a good headline.
That's one part. The other part is the Chinese will accelerate their own development of the products.
Yeah. Yeah, but I mean, the military stuff goes on. There's still posturing. It just seems like we're on a collision course with silliness.
They do all this, again, thinking they're creating chips to be used in negotiating with the Chinese government.
But it's not working.
It's not working. It's obviously not working.
Yeah. Let's talk about Great Britain for a second here.
Oh, disasters.
Well, they declassified a bunch of documents talking about the secret deals ending Britain's control in the Gulf. And all the things they were supporting, different groups, either sometimes for Israel, sometimes against Israel, just making backroom deals, all this stuff. I mean, the legacy, we always think, when I talk to people in Great Britain and Europe and America, they always say colonialization. That's over with. We're done. It's like it never happened. But then when you read these documents and see how these secret dealings created the problems that we are visited with today. It really shows you that colonialization and the harm that it did continues.
And however gentlemanly they would like to appear, they have no bottom line as to how far they go.
Well, look at the Truss and she's going to be, she probably is right now, the new PM. But unbelievable. I mean, the things that she's promising to do, tear up, invoke Article 16 and walk away from the EU.
That's right.
If you were the EU...
Walk away from the deal.
Yeah, but I don't, where? Where are you going? He says, you know, it's this kind of jingoistic, I'll show them, and she's also put China on the top of her
without
hit
any
list.
Strategic planning at all.
16% of their trade is with China.
That's right.
What is she going to do? And she keeps saying, well, I'm going to teach China a lesson, but they won't give up their trade with us.
That's right.
I mean, I'm sure the EU would be happy to soak up whatever trade that Britain loses.
Right. That's right.
And there would be no tears, especially in view of Article 16.
The Norwegian would be happy to ship more salmon, so you don't use Scottish salmon, right?
Well, you know, but this is leading to this issue of will Great Britain become Britain? Will Scotland say we had enough of this nonsense?
And Northern Ireland is a major issue as well, because
you know, right now it would be better for everyone if Northern Ireland just became Ireland. That's really the only common sense way of solving this.
Yeah, and it's headed in that direction.
Well, probably sooner is better. Chileans are preparing to vote in a referendum that breaks from the past, from the period when the U.S. was actively involved in managing assassinations, teaching people terrorist tactics in terms of interrogation, propaganda, all of these things, all the things that they taught at the School of Americas.
That's right.
Yeah. It's got interesting. Now, all of a sudden, you see it. Once again, legacy of colonialism. All of a sudden, Chile's had enough. They want something different.
Mexico had enough.
Yeah.
Colombia had enough. Argentina had enough. And now Chile.
And you can add probably Brazil.
Brazil, very soon.
Right now, it looks very, the previous...
Lula
looks very strong.
Yeah.
But you have Bolsonaro already saying that if I lose, it was fixed.
Because
he's head of the government. He's saying the government he's head of, all right,
is going to fix the
election against him. Does this sound like Donald Trump to you?
Oh, it's absolutely.
I wonder if there'll be a few phone calls to different areas of Brazil. Hey, I need about 50,000 votes. That's all. That's all. Just I'm calling some other guys too. I need just 50,000 votes here, 100,000, 2 million here, and everything will be just fine. Can you imagine? I mean, democracy right now is on its heels. It's becoming a laughingstock. It's not addressing the needs of the people. And yet people, the U.S. is running around saying this is the only solution, complete chaos.
And the swing for all of South America, America's backyard, in a direction against the U.S. is absolutely amazing.
What is the U.S. doing about it?
Nothing.
I mean, they say, oh, we have to keep China off. You had the Summit of the Americas, which turned out to be a joke.
What are they going to do?
An embarrassment.
Well, what is the U.S. going to do if now, for example, Brazil, Colombia, Argentina, Chile, and all these countries have China as its major trading partner?
Well, it's not only that. I mean, we notice with RCEP, nations like South Korea and Japan, who not on good terms, were able to join a larger group in order to do trade. I wonder if at some point, if South America won't do the same thing, if they join into RCEP, and then you have a economic bloc. It's not always going to be political, but an economic bloc that would see them reducing the tariffs amongst themselves, joining in a global South and
a more efficient supply chain.
Yeah.
It's headed in that direction. I understand a number of Latin American countries are in discussions on RCEP.
They are, and definitely it's a lot more palatable than CPTPP.
Yeah.
Because of the restrictions. You can have about 5% of where you can choose within your economy things that you need to protect for political reasons, while they over time work to get rid of all the tariffs and duties. So maybe the better way to go. I mean, people were always laughing. In the U.S., they were saying, "Oh, it'll never work. There are no standards. You know, no one wants that." Well, the U.S. was the one who didn't want it.
That's right.
Yeah. So
actually, it's two countries. Unfortunately, it's U.S. and India.
India, but you know, India is, they'll go where it's good for India. And in the end, if RCEP becomes a thing, they'll be clamoring to be let in.
Yeah.
They'll demand that there be concessions. There won't be any.
On India and on Great Britain before, the latest numbers in terms of GDP, did you see the announcement? India had overtaken the UK to be the 5th largest in the world in terms of GDP.
That really has got to hurt Great Britain's pride.
Oh, boy.
Our former colony. Of course, the U.S. was a former colony, too.
That's right.
It seems like China, they did their best to make it they never actually got to that level of making it a colony, but they did seize significant areas of land and concessions.
But for India, very proud.
Yeah, but 1.4 billion people versus, what is it? It was only a matter of time.
90 million,
Afghanistan. More than half of Afghanistan's 39 million people need humanitarian help, and 6 million are at risk of famine. More than 1 million children are estimated to be suffering from the most severe, life-threatening form of malnutrition and could die without proper treatment. $720 million is needed to prevent a humanitarian catastrophe. Meanwhile, the U.S. has pushed over $50 billion in 6 months into Ukraine. Is Afghanistan completely forgotten?
And U.S. still has confiscated or blocked money that belonged to Afghanistan.
$7.5 billion.
And U.S. has spent over the last 2 decades, is it 2 decades?
2.1 trillion.
That's right. All of this doesn't make any sense.
No, there's no money for vaccines. There's no money to prevent, they could spend 2.1 trillion for a war over 20 years.
A lot of military industrial complex and private contractors made a lot of money.
And a lot of the money can't even be traced.
That's right.
They have no idea where it went. The projects that it was supposed to build never materialized.
Were never built.
It was a huge bonanza.
Yeah.
You know, the interesting thing is the people, the military-industrial complex in Europe was envious.
That's right.
How can we get part of something like this?
Yeah.
Yeah.
But ultimately, like you said, over $2 trillion spent, and that's more than $100 billion a year, right? $2 trillion over 20 years. And then all this money that's going to the Ukraine. Meanwhile, confiscating money that belongs to Afghanistan. In the meantime, the country is collapsing in terms of malnutrition and health, so on.
But it's not even on the radar. It's not discussed by Biden, who was the one who had the unorderly retreat.
And certainly not Trump even.
No. I mean, I'm reading articles about how difficult it is for many Afghans, the 100,000 or so, not 100, tens of thousands who went to the U.S. I think 10 to 15,000, and they're trying to just build a new life, and people don't even know about them. They say Afghan, where is that?
Yeah,
I mean it is amazing that we can spend that much money, lose that many lives, and
killed so many people,
displaced, and now it doesn't exist.
That's right.
Yeah. Gorbachev's passing. I mean, he was not given a state funeral.
No.
By Putin.
No.
And there's a lot of talk that Putin believes that he was responsible
for the collapse of the Soviet Union.
Yes.
Yeah.
And that That's why he wouldn't do it. He was also there to protect Gorbachev. He made sure that nothing bad happened to him. And he was a loyal soldier in that things. But deep within his heart, it's clear that he does not regard him a hero of the Republic. No. And maybe quite the opposite. Somebody who...
I think Gorbachev is just happened to have been the person who was at that point in history, at that time. It could have been anybody else. Because the situation with the Soviet Union was really quite dire at the time. The economy was collapsing. They spent everything on the military.
And don't forget about Afghanistan.
And Afghanistan also was a disaster.
The history of Afghanistan, going back those many years, it's just...
UK and then Russia, Soviet Union and the US.
But to what avail? Now you have 39 million people,
very poor,
half of whom are starving.
That's right.
No one cares. Okay, let's talk about China. UN releases human rights report on Xinjiang. This is what I found interesting. UN, potential crimes against humanity in China's Xinjiang. Long delayed report issued literally the day that Michelle Bachelet stepped down. How often do you see a report about potential crimes? Potentially, you may kill I suspect that you have ill feelings towards your mother-in-law, whoever, potentially.
That's right.
It's not a laughing matter in terms of what China's being accused of. But no evidence.
No evidence.
No evidence that isn't tied back to CIA-funded sources, by failed academics.
One thing that is very, very clear, okay, if there are such human rights abuses, the first and foremost who would be in the forefront in challenging China would be the Islamic republics.
Yes, who are not.
None of them, not a single one, comes out.
Well, Turkey has come out and said some things in terms of saying, well, we're concerned about the situation, but we have nothing to indicate that there are any abuses.
I think the Uyghurs, some of the Uyghurs who left the country, left China and went abroad, many of them lived in Turkey. So
they continue to live in Turkey.
That's right. So there is a diaspora that's in Turkey.
Well, but when somebody leaves an area, that means they're not happy there.
That's right.
Okay, and most of these people wanted to practice a more fundamental version of Islam, and they thought they'd do it. They are actually quite separate from the Turkish people. So it's not like they found a new home. What they tend to do is congregate in conclaves. And there's a lot of talk about, my relative, I can't find my relative or something like that. Well, they left the country. There was
more than that. I think that there were some studies which showed many went through Turkey to join the holy wars.
Well, no, it's not just through Turkey. You remember the slaughter in Shanghai when this group of disaffected...
in Chengdu.
Chengdu, when they went down the subway platform, killing old men and children.
That's right.
Because they had been denied the ability to go and fight and do jihad.
That's right.
In the Middle East.
Yeah.
But I couldn't find
the other thing that we've talked about before is people put in concentration camp, forced labor, to pick cotton.
Yeah, but it all comes from Adrian Zenz, who works for the CIA or CIA-funded group.
A very large European company that used to buy a lot of cotton for their clothing lines. The COO told me that cotton in Xinjiang is now 90% picked by machines. So where's the forced labor coming from? He doesn't get it.
Look, cotton fields are vast.
Yeah.
To have a group of individuals pick the cotton for you, and you have to feed them and give them water and collect them and move them from field to field, versus a robot that can basically work 24 hours a day other than maintenance and refueling. It's not economic. this idea that they're using forced labor, it's more trouble than it's worth.
That's right.
Yeah. So is this a politicization of the UN?
United Nations? Yeah. It's been heading in that direction for quite some time.
But I mean, I notice that it's accepted by a lot of people I talk to. There's this kind of new political correctness that if you're not down on Russia and China, right, you're not politically correct.
Correct.
Now, if India or another nation does the exact same thing, that's understandable. But for some reason, you get to pick and choose your enemies, not based on what they do or what you say they do.
This politicization, for example, Sergei Viktorovich Lavrov couldn't get a visa to go attend the General Assembly.
It's a violation of the UN Charter.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Violation of the UN agreement.
But who is taking up the call? Where is the international press? Where is this idea? Where is this idea that we need a global order? Where are the defenders of the global order when you have these situations? Unbelievable. Let's talk about the Hunan bank fraud. 234 suspects have been rounded up, and they're now in custody. The savings are going to be covered up to the government amount, the government guaranteed amount, and they're in negotiations with other people who had monies in those banks. So it seems in rather short order, when I think back to the U.S., the savings and loans, which took years to unravel. Yeah. Even the Madoff deal, where it's quite clearly a Ponzi scheme and things like that, took years, 7, 8, 10 years to unravel everything and get the money back. This happened in a few months.
In less than a month, actually. Because what they've done is there's a guaranteed coverage. And
like FDIC in the United States, Federal Deposit Insurance Corporation, it guarantees up to $100,000, I believe, in the U.S. for a campaign.
And here there's a guarantee level, but they're addressing it now to figure out what proportion of the amount above that will be covered.
But I'm just going to basic governance. The ability to quickly react to something that happened. There was an organized gang that got control of 4 banks, basically mafia guys. They pilfered lots of money, but within a month, the government has moved in, started getting people their money.
And confiscated all of these people's money.
And grabbed these guys.
Yeah.
So,
hopefully this gets resolved. It will be resolved quickly.
Yeah. China sets the day for the Party Congress, October 16th.
Yes.
This will be the 20th National Congress of the Chinese Communist Party and will set the tone for China's next 5 years. Everybody's talking about, Xi Jinping and his role in it, but I think they're missing the point. China moves almost glacially. Everything is planned. Nothing is decided at the moment. So why is there this intense scrutiny on just Xi Jinping as opposed to the process itself?
I think the intense scrutiny is more from the Western media than the Chinese.
I completely agree with you. This is an attempt to create the sense that China is an autocratic government, has an autocratic government, when in fact it is very much a bureaucratic government.
Yeah.
I mean, how do you produce a 5-year plan that looks like the last 5-year plan? That's incremental. If you have an autocracy where people are making, random decisions about stuff, it just doesn't make sense. Yet there's always this desire to paint China as an emperor system.
I think, that's the Western press. They can get all excited about that if they want. But for the Chinese population, to have the Party Congress time set means something that is very, very different, because they're anticipating, after the Party Congress, to have new policies, new directions, things that will address their daily lives in terms of businesses, livelihood.
But it's not like veering off.
No.
It is more marching ahead. Here are the problems. Here are the solutions to these current problems.
You have a party congress that makes a summary of what happened in the previous 5 years and then lays out, okay, these are the adjustments may be needed for the next 5 years. And that's what I think most Chinese are.
Well, no, everyone's waiting for it, and it's absolutely necessary. But instead, it's all about Xi Jinping,
That's
as
right.
opposed to the process, the governance that's been delivered. So, consumer confidence and consumption in China, this is related to what you said. How is China going forward? How is it going to adjust to things that it can't control, climate change, global recession, too much money floating around the U.S. and Europe.
Anti-globalization.
Anti-globalization, trade wars,
Yeah.
Military threats.
All of these affect consumer confidence.
Well, hopefully that'll change. But I mean, my understanding.
You saw what happened last year, the V-shaped recovery, where the pent-up demand just went absolutely berserk by the second quarter of last year.
Well, I'm hoping that will be the situation again this time. But it's, after a certain period of time, the negativism starts to weigh on people.
Yeah.
And I'm really concerned about that.
Well, that negativism will continue because global economy will not do well for the next couple of quarters.
I know.
If not for the next couple of years.
Well, but I notice that China is doing everything they possibly can to help exports.
Yeah.
The yuan is lower than it's been in a long time. In addition to that, they're putting in policies to help export companies. Is already a low-cost provider for many, many areas, especially bulk things like cloth to chemicals.
In terms of that, in terms of exports, I don't think they really need to push it very hard because there's no global supply chain that can supply what China is supplying the rest of the world.
But this desire that you've seen to make it more efficient.
That's right.
To drive down I was looking at a number of robots in China. They put about somewhere around almost 170,000 robots in China in the previous year. The next closest one was Japan with like 26,000. And then it goes down from there. China was far and away number one. In fact, if you looked at how many China put in and the rest...
Efficiency and productivity.
Yeah, but driving towards this productivity makes China even more competitive.
Yeah.
So it's just hard to understand during a time of inflation that people, they don't want to pay more. They're already switching to lower cost brands. So
If we look at the numbers, if we look at the numbers, the first half of this year saw the biggest trade balance surplus with China's foreign trade. Actually, that's what I meant, in terms of not having to push very hard because there's very little competition.
But I'm just saying that China is pushing hard.
Yeah.
I mean, the amount of time and energy they've put into it in policies which are aimed directly at reducing the costs of manufacturing, increasing the value of their IP, all of this stuff. Another thing, China came out on top not only, like we discussed last year, in the number of scientists based in Shanghai and Beijing, but there was another statistic that came out that Chinese scientists are now the number one referenced sources.
In the
so
world,
this is a real sea change. I mean, because I remember even 5-10 years ago, people say, "Oh, China."
Coming back to the RMB, it's declined somewhat against the dollar when the U.S. started raising interest rates, and there was a capital flight from all over the world in dollar terms. But what we see here is what actually is for non-dollar based, with the exception of the U.S., every other country, the strength of your currency is based on two things. One, FDI, foreign direct investment of dollars coming in. Second is your trade surplus or negative trade. And China continues to be strong in these two. So when I'm asked by friends, what do you think where the RMB is going to go? I say, well, it's a short-term blip. You know?
Oh, I'd agree with that. On the U.S. side, they have to start being worried. I mean, with the tilt, by upping their rates, which isn't going to help their economy. All right, mortgage rates have gone up. The Fed is still threatening even more interest rate hikes. This is going to push the economy down. They keep talking about unemployment is low and all this type of stuff, but it was really low just before the crash too.
That's right.
And the financial
and how
crisis.
About the many people who decided just to leave the workforce?
Yeah, well, 63% of the people are out there living paycheck to paycheck. Don't tell me you have a good economy.
That's right.
And they're just using this statistic that that people can't find employees as an indicator of a strong economy. And I don't understand why they're doing that. There's no justification. It's going to end up in misery. Okay, let's go to Global South. Covovax vaccine was invented at the Center for Vaccine Development at Texas Children's Hospital and intended for countries that could not get access to more expensive COVID vaccines. India has inoculated millions of teens with Covovax. Children from 12 to 14 at a school in Bangalore were completely vaccinated on August 10th, and it's being used as a booster for adults. What's beautiful about this is they gave it away for free.
Wow.
Yeah. But what's strange about it, it's not being supported by the U.S. government. Or anybody else for that matter, because it's free. Apparently, the big pharma companies who are selling their vaccines aren't too happy about it. So they're only getting traction in places like India and places which really have no other alternative.
Desperate places.
Yeah. Once again, here was a free vaccine. The U.S., it was developed in the U.S. The U.S. instead chose to buy expensive pharma-based, vaccines, and then donate those. Imagine the U.S. has promised about little over $8 billion towards global vaccines outside the United States. Right? If they had done this things and set up factories to produce the free COVID,
think about how many they've
you wouldn't have need 50
That's
billion.
right. That's right.
All right. Yet here you have a country that continues to ignore everything that is necessary in favor of big companies, whether it's military industrial complex, big pharma.
Pharmaceuticals, yeah.
It just doesn't seem that as a democracy it's functioning.
You know what it seems like? Everything they're trying to do is going against efficient, effective management of the world.
I know, but it's at the other end of the screaming that the only way to be fair and efficient is to embrace the chaos that they're preaching.
That's right.
We got one last issue. You gave a brilliant speech on ESG, environmentally sustainable goals, in which you exposed the fact that a lot of this is greenwashing. We need to have meaningful climate change policies.
That's right.
But the way it's been set up in the West, right?
It's become a business.
A business, greenwashing, which is putting money in the hands of bankers and consultants, lawyers, investment banking firms, and accounting firms.
That's right.
And without really creating any change, they simply reclassify what you're doing and say, now it's green.
Now it's
wave
green.
The hand.
That means your brand is green. You're getting cheaper access to capital.
That's it. It's just about getting cheaper access to capital.
The issue that I have with ESG is how it began. It began a couple of decades ago as an attack against China for polluting the environment, for poor working conditions. So you're socially irresponsible. And governance, which means companies were not managed or monitored properly. It was actually against China to start to talk about these things. So China actually, some of this criticism is valid. So let's do something about it. It's not because of ESG standards that they clean the air in Beijing. It's government policy, government commitment, and concentrated and focused effort that now give us every day blue skies.
Well, not every day, but
mostly.
Yeah. I mean, it's been a real sea change.
Now, what happened then is it became politically correct to do this, then it became a business. Making it into a business means, this is the part which really troubles me, is the developed countries have companies that can afford to do this and hire the consultants and set up the standards and abide by the standards and greenwash your books, right? But the developing countries cannot do it.
It's going to be a tax.
That's right. It would be a tax. And the other part about this, who's setting the standards?
Oh.
Can you have the same standards in California as in Nigeria? It would be absurd, right?
I know, but I mean, it's just, this is another example of people enriching themselves at the worst time and in the worst way. I mean, carbon capture, there are ways to do it, and I'm hoping that the governments, not only in China and elsewhere, will adopt scientifically valid ways of controlling this.
If what we've seen this summer isn't enough to teach people about how bad climate change has become.
Well, you saw it in Australia. He largely lost because he said climate change, it doesn't matter. You know, when the rivers run dry, the lakes run dry, and temperatures reach 40 or even 50 degrees in some places, it's real. The impact is absolutely huge. And then I am hoping that the world could come together, maybe not on other geopolitical issues, but on this, because it is global, you know? No, we don't really have a choice. It's not like, we'll put it off.
We go to Mars. Yeah.
But I mean, this is, I mean, the hypocrisy of it is that you hear Europe beating the drum that China is using more coal, all right, and has authorized more coal plants. But the issue is that so is Europe.
That's right.
But they're not talking about that.
That's right. Germany is opening all their old
they're reopening 16, and they're continuing ones that were supposed to be phased out. Now, I'm not saying it's a good thing. I'm saying that when you have a temporary crisis, as is being faced now because of the droughts, 80% of the power that was being generated by hydroelectric in the western parts of China disappeared because there's no water. Right? You have factories shutting down because the power is reserved for humans to keep them alive. And yet somehow this becomes evil China, wanting to pollute the world. And I mean, anything that China does seems to be viewed as bad.
There is one other element there. It's European governments. I cannot believe how unstrategic they are in not considering the results of sanctioning Russia on its natural gas.
Yes, and we've discussed this before, but this last week you saw 70,000 protesters in Czechoslovakia saying, enough.
That's right.
We're done.
Organizers said it's over 100,000, but police said no, 70.
Well, Charles, this is the end of it.
This is the end of this week.
And we'll see you next week. Next week we can talk about the the country of India, which has arrested a Indian man who appeared at a match wearing a Pakistani t-shirt, which he said was a joke, but he's referred to police custody. More about that next week.
Wow.
So much for democracy and freedom of speech.
That's right.
Till next time.